This is Huntsville Sports Weekly, where we talk all things Huntsville, Texas sports, Hornets, Bearcats, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Rob Hipp and Josh Criswell.
All right, here we are, episode number 10, the big 1-0 since we started Huntsville Sports Weekly. I'm Rob Hipp, sports director with K-Sam here in Huntsville, joined as always by my good friend Josh Criswell, sports editor of the Huntsville Item. Josh, what's going on today, man? We got a fun show coming up.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited for this one. You know, Huntsville finally opening up district play this week, and we're going to have a showdown of easily the best defense in the district in Huntsville, and then probably the best offense in the league as well on the other side in Bryan Rudder. So really exciting week, and have a really exciting guest coming up here in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, well, you just mentioned, the Hornets making their case for the best defense in 5A. Bobino talked about it in that post-game interview. He said, we are the best defense in the state of Texas. Of course, the Hornets stopping C.E. King about a half a yard from their goal line on 3 consecutive plays this past Friday night to secure that victory as time was nearing expiration. They still had to get back on offense and basically run it one last time. But we talk about a Hornet team, and we'll dig into this a little bit more today, defeated 3 6A teams in non-conference play, and pretty good 6A teams at that. And then we're going to talk to Mike Lucas today from KAG-TV. And so, Josh, excited. It's going to be a fun day, and looking forward to talking about these Hornets also, man. And basketball, don't want to forget about that.
Yeah, big day for the basketball team. I guess yesterday was ranked number 14 in Class 5A in the TABC preseason rankings. Really big thing for them. I'm not sure the last time they were there. I know it's been a long time. But really talented team, brings back, the offensive MVP in Jadarian White, newcomer of the year in A.J. Wilson, 2 guys that are starring for the football team right now, as well as a couple of all-district selections in Taylor Harrell and Ty Matthews. So a really good team coming back, won an area championship last season, first time they did that in a decade. So exciting year for the Hornets, and I'm glad to see them, finally getting some recognition. They never were ranked in this poll, I don't think, during that whole 43-game district winning streak. So I'm glad to see the Hornets finally getting some recognition.
Well, a lot of recognition. We're going to talk about it today. It's right here. It's right now. It's on Huntsville Sports Weekly. We'll step aside and take a break. When we come back for segment 2, we'll hear from Mike Lucas, sports reporter for KAG-TV and the Brazos Valley. We'll be right back in a few moments. This is Huntsville Sports Weekly. Stay with us, friends. All right, well, welcome back, everyone. Rob Hipp alongside Josh Criswell, and now joining us, Mike Lucas from KAG-TV, the sports reporter. Mike, glad to have you today. Man, you moved to the Brazos Valley. Didn't move from, you moved to the Brazos Valley, joined KAGs in October of 2018. Prior to that move, you reported on news and sports for 3 years at WCYB-TV in Bristol, Virginia. Played basketball at Emerson College in Boston. And I wanted to start off and just say thank you for your coverage. You guys are, about an hour away from us here in Huntsville in the College Station area, but thank you so much for your coverage and your dedication to this community. It absolutely, Mike, does not go unnoticed, my friend.
Oh, we really appreciate it, Rob. I don't know if I've ever had my entire resume read to me before. I got to do some cooler things in my life to add up to that and increase my value. But yeah, I've been in Brazos Valley now 2 years. I moved to Texas and started at KAGs 2 years from tomorrow. Josh, I think you started around that same time, and since then it's been a pretty good friendship we've developed, and we've traded off some Huntsville, Consol, Rudder, Bryan stats, and I think this Friday might be our best Brazos Valley Huntsville showdown yet. And if it tops last year's A&M Consolidated Huntsville game, then we are in for an absolute treat come Friday night.
Yeah, and that was a thriller, A&M Consolidated in Huntsville last season. And then Huntsville and Bryan Rudder also had a game, with playoff implications on the line, and Huntsville ended up edging them out, to get that last playoff spot in the district. But, before we move on to that, got to add one more accolade. You won the Items College Football Pick'em for last week. I don't think I told you, but
I did. Let's go.
That means that you have to come on back this Friday. So we'll be happy to have you back, and we'll have that out in this weekend's paper.
Was I above 500? That's all I need to know.
I think you were right around 500. It wasn't much above, but it was much better than me. I think I was around 4-12 for the week. So
I will take it. I tweeted out after that, if you want to lose money, look at my picks, but I guess this week for once I may have made someone a little cash and they have to share it with me now. That's the only rule, right?
There you go. There you go. But yeah, as I said, really big matchup coming up this week. You know, you touched on it, I think, yesterday on TV, but that offense versus that defense, it's kind of like strength meets strength. Huntsville averaging, just 171 yards, under 10 points allowed. Rudder, on the other hand, putting up 583 yards, over 50 points a game. What's going to give here? What's kind of, your outlook and your preview for what we're going to see on Friday?
I think in any time you have an offense versus defense matchup, this is the same conversation we had before the Huntsville-Consol game last year. I tend to lean towards the defensive side of the ball. Defense wins championships. You've heard that for as long as you've been watching, covering, enjoying football. But this Rudder offense is special. It's not one-dimensional. They can run the ball. They're averaging 200-plus yards on the ground a game. And then AJ Izar, Rudder's junior quarterback, leads Texas in passing yards through 4 weeks of the 5A, 6A season. So it's versatile. Now, they don't have a traditional running game. They don't have a workhorse running back. DJ Wallace, number 10, he's big guy. He's their short yardage back. EJ Izar, kind of as a quarterback, he's more of a passer, but he's definitely a dual threat guy. And then they hand the ball to Keith Ron Lee, who just picked up an offer from TCU as a receiver, but he gets about 5 to 10 jet sweep motions, wildcat snaps a game. And when the ball's in his hands, he's as dangerous as any player in this area you will see. We just actually talked to Coach Southern a few minutes ago, and he pretty much said we have to stop number 5. That is our number one priority on defense this week. When he touches the ball, he scores more often than not. And through 4 weeks, I think he has 11 touchdowns receiving and 4 or 5 touchdowns on the ground. So that dude is an absolute weapon for head coach Eric Izar and Rudder. It's going to be fun. We haven't seen Rudder play a great defense yet. Huntsville is absolutely a great defense. And then on the other side, can Huntsville, they may slow down Rudder. I don't think you can shut down Rudder. Can that Hornets offense, which has been inconsistent so far, can they match to at least an extent some points? Because I think Rudder will be able to score at least a couple touchdowns in this game. Can Huntsville do that against the Rudder defense that's still unproven through 4 weeks?
Well, we're talking to Mike Lewis of KAG-TV. Appreciate you being here with us on Huntsville Sports Weekly and covering the Hornets and covering teams throughout this entire Brazos Valley area. Mike, you've been here since 2018. This Huntsville Hornet team, and we've already mentioned the defense, has been superior. The offensive line this year starting to find a little bit of their rhythm. What have you seen from your reporting this year compared to last year? Some things that stand out. Obviously the defense, and if you want to expand on that, feel free to, but just wanted to ask you that question.
I think the one thing that stands out is this is a brand new team from last year. I don't know half of these kids yet. And granted, they've only played 3 games, and I haven't seen them in person yet. I'll see them on Friday for the very first time. But, they lost, I think it was 34 seniors from last season's team, 34 seniors. The entire offense is new starters. A.J. Wilson's an absolute freak of nature athlete, an absolute superstar in the making at quarterback. And then between Butcher, Woodbury on the outside, Huntsville has a chance to make big plays. But the one difference I think this year is, and talking to Coach Southern today and Coach Izar earlier this week, that front 4 for Huntsville is elite, absolutely elite. Coach Izar said it's the best in the state, 5A, 6A. He didn't care. He said it's the best front 4 we will play all season long, and it's the best front 4 he believes in the state. Coach Southern says it's his best front 4 he's had as well, and that includes guys like Devondre Sweat, who's now at Texas, Hayden, who's now at Sam Houston State. That is an elite crop of defensive line talent for him to look around and be like, hey, this group is my best yet. The Bobino brothers on the inside. You have Sebastian. I'm drawing a blank on his last name, but they have speed at the ends. And when you have 600 pounds of Bobinos in the middle clogging it up, it's tough to run on them, but they're also lightning fast on the outside. And as you see right here on the goal line stand, C.E. King just couldn't get a push. Coach Southern said that was the 5th time in his career a game's come down to a goal line stand for him. The first 4 didn't go his way. The 5th time did, and he wants his team to kind of cherish that memory because it just doesn't happen too often. So I think that defensive line being as good as maybe Coach Southern's ever had in Huntsville really stands out to me, just because the talent they've had come through that position group the last few years.
Yeah, that last stand we're looking at there, 7 seniors, 4 juniors on that, and boy, just an outstanding effort.
Yeah, and Mike, you mentioned that elite defensive line. That brings me to my next question for you. You talk about Keith Lee, who might be the best offensive weapon in this district, and then EJ Ezar, a guy who won the Built Ford Tough Texas Player of the Week for 5A after putting up over 600 yards in a game earlier this year. But I got to ask you, Huntsville's defensive line seems like it's been able to kind of have its way in the middle and has been getting consistent pressure in the backfield all season long against 6A opponents. If they continue to do that on Friday night, does Rudder have a chance in this one?
Yeah, and I think EJ Ezar doesn't get enough credit for his mobility. I think one of the things he does exceptionally well is take a broken play, find time, and then hit his open receiver who in a scramble drill or however they get open. If you look at EJ, he's not the tallest guy. He doesn't look like he benches 600 pounds, but he's a baller. I mean, I don't know how else to describe. The kid makes plays, and Rudder's offensive line, I don't think is great. I think it's solid, and they definitely do a good job giving him time back there. But if you go back to week 1 against Bastrop, where Keith Lee had 4 touchdowns, all of which came against double coverage, and he jumped over guys and was making these unbelievable two-handed catches in traffic. None of those came from a clean pocket. Ezar kind of went back, moved around, scrambled to his right, scrambled to his left. And they run a lot of RPOs for him too. So I think Rudder has the ability to keep that Huntsville defensive line at bay. I think a lot of times the Hornets are going to have their way with that line and create just havoc in the backfield for Rudder. But I think Coach Ezar knows they're going to have to get the ball out quickly, get it to their playmakers on quick slants, screen passes in space, the little RPOs. And I think they'll move the pocket a lot. And even though Ezar doesn't look like your prototypical 4-4 mobile quarterback, he is absolutely talented enough to extend plays in the pocket, get out of the pocket, move around, and create that extra fraction of a second that could be the difference between a sack and a big play.
Yeah, you mentioned that playmaking ability at receiver and then also that mobility at quarterback. And, that for that reason exactly, I think this might be the toughest test that Huntsville's defense has during the regular season. And that says a lot because A&M Consolidated number 3 in the state is going to be really talented. But I think that, ability to kind of make plays happen whenever things break down is potentially one thing that could give, I'm not going to say give the Huntsville defense trouble, but it could be one way, to still pick up offensive yardage where they've just really shut down offenses through the first 3 weeks of the season. Yeah,
Coach Ezar said, we're going to have EJ just improvise at times. There are going to be plays where the line breaks down, where Huntsville wins those one-on-one battles in the trench. Hey, can Ezar buy 2 seconds for Keith Ron to get open, or for Marcus Stiles to get open, or for Kendron King to get open? You look at Consol, Kyle Willis has 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns through 4 games. This kid's very good too. They lost Gage Paul last year, but their new quarterback is very talented, but he's a pocket passer. When it breaks down on him, he's not going to move around and buy that extra time like Ezar does. And I think that's his best trait, to be honest with you. I think Ezar has a great arm. He can run, but I think his best, maybe most sellable trait to the next level is his ability to create that extra fraction of a second, whether it's in the pocket or out of the pocket, to allow his guys to get open. And that's the key match. We can say it all we want. Can the defensive line get to Ezar? And can Ezar buy that extra half a second to let his guys get open? That's the one thing, more than anything else, I'll be watching on Friday night. And it should be a lot of fun because, like you said, that defensive line's elite, and Ezar has been the best quarterback in the state of Texas through 4 weeks. So, pick your poison.
That's maybe one of those deals. Rudder, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, I don't think Rudder has made it to the playoffs in their existence.
Never. Nope.
And this year, they're feeling the best that they have ever felt. You've talked about a little bit about that, but for a team that's been around for, I don't want to say considerable time now, but I believe going back to the mid-2000s, maybe late 2008, if I'm not mistaken, they're poised this year, and they're hungry, and they finally want to get into the playoffs, Mike.
Their motto this season is something to prove. And they came close to making the playoffs last year, head coach Eric Ezar's first season. And they got a lot of hype, and they got a lot of recognition because it's the best Rudder team we've seen since 2010 when they also started 4-0, which this current team is matched for the best start in program history. They want to prove it wasn't a fluke. They want to prove, hey, we had a couple good players, but we're building something at Rudder. And it's great to win non-district games, but you make your point. You prove your point that you're a program to be reckoned with by winning big-time district games. And Rudder this season, more than any other season in program history, has the ability to beat quality district opponents like Huntsville, A&M Consolidated, Lamar Consolidated, the list goes on and on. And they are hungry. I can say they are hungry to prove that this is not a fluke, and they belong in the conversation of playoff contenders in Class 5A D2.
Looking at what might be the best Huntsville versus Rudder matchup that we've ever seen. That's Mike Lucas from KAG-TV. You can follow him on Twitter at KAGS_Lucas. Mike, thanks so much for taking a few minutes to chat with us, and we'll see you out there on Friday night.
I will be there, and I'll have all the highlights on Twitter too. So if you can't make it to Merrill Green Stadium, you want to see how the game plays out, either watch Friday Night Lights on KAGS at 10:15 or find it on my Twitter afterwards. Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you, Mike.
I appreciate it, Mike. We'll take a short break, and we'll be back with our final segment here in just a few minutes.
All right, friends, welcome back as we close it out here on the third segment. As we look ahead to this week, we'll talk about some things that are going on around Huntsville. Josh, and it's so great, by the way, to have Mike on and just the accessibility from the media in this area and you and what you do at the Huntsville Item and what Mike does over at KAGS. I mean, just an area that is truly blessed to have coverage for these kids and appreciate all that you guys do. When we start this third segment, one thing that we always like to do is talk about one thing from you and me that's really impressed us with something. And this week, it's what's impressed us, you, and what's impressed me, our thoughts on the thing that's been most impressive in non-district play. And Josh, I'll let you lead with that as we close out the segment here. We've got a lot more of those to talk about.
Yeah, the thing I think that impressed me the most was it's easy to point to, and it was that game-winning goal line stand. We're going to talk about the defensive line here shortly, but that whole team really, that defense rallied together. They're sitting there, I think, first and goal from the 7 in the final minute, and then they make 3 stops, inside the 3-yard line, including the last 2 inside the 1. And, most teams you would have a lot of doubt, but it didn't seem like there was much doubt at all. The team, kept its confidence, and I think for a team that really dominated, the better half of the first 2.5 games that it played this year, I think that just having that adversity and, prospering during it, I think is a big thing for that defense.
Something that really stood out to me about the Hornets through these first 3 games, non-conference games, before we get underway in conference play this Friday versus Bryan Rudder, it's been their ability, their leadership. This team is starting to mold and to really gel, and we're starting to see leadership qualities come out of a lot of these young players, especially on the offensive side, where you have a lot of new guys, quite frankly. And Josh, one thing that's really starting to stand out to me, and there's been a few setbacks, but it's the offensive line. I like how they're starting to come together. The defense has been great, no question about that. That's been impressive. Don't mishear what I'm saying. But the offensive line and how they're starting to come together, that has been really impressive for me. And what this team has been able to do as a whole against 3 6A teams, it's truly been a good run here to start. And now, of course, the big show starts, Josh, as District 10 5A gets underway. And it's going to be a tough one. Actually, a first tough 2 out of the gates with Bryan Rudder and then A&M Consolidated. So you're facing 2 of the top teams in your district right away to start the season.
Absolutely. I mean, it's great for Huntsville that they've kind of built up this momentum and confidence through the first 3 weeks, especially, as Mike mentioned, so many guys, over 30 seniors gone from last year's team that went on that 3-round deep playoff run. But coming up this week, going to be a great matchup. We talked about it earlier with Mike, but, Keith Runley and EJ Izar is a quarterback receiver duo that Huntsville hasn't seen yet this year. And that shiftiness behind center is something that is going to be a very unique test for Huntsville. And like I said, I think it might be, their toughest matchup potentially that they face all of district play.
Yeah, you talk about their quarterback in EJ, and of course he's the son of head coach Eric Izar. But look, coaches don't play favorites. Maybe some do, but I know in Bryan they don't, and I definitely know in Huntsville they don't play favorites. And you can expect a really good matchup. And AJ Wilson's starting to mature as well. AJ probably doesn't know this, and it's probably good that he doesn't know this. And he'll find out on his own. He's 5-0 as a starting quarterback. That's pretty impressive because he won the 2 last year as a sophomore when he started, and now winning his first 3. That young man is poised for some success. But last week, the interception, that was the first one of the season. But then on the official stat line that we obtained, he's credited with those 2 fumbles. So 3 turnovers last week. It's good that he went through that. So hopefully now that's out of his system. It's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, Josh. I didn't play quarterback, but that there's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, and it's hard to be a high school quarterback.
Yeah, and I mean, those are learning experiences. He's a guy who, like you said, that was his 5th start at the varsity level ever. And so, those are learning curves that you're going to go through. But I think the thing that I've really liked that I've seen is that, these aren't mistakes or turnovers that have anything to do with talent. They're turnovers that occur whenever you're trying to make a play happen. So hopefully learn from those mistakes. And I think the thing that's really optimistic to see is that on those chances, we've talked about how that offensive lines come together, but even whenever guys are able to break through that, it seems like they're never able to get to the quarterback. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I imagine, I can count the number of times he's been sacked this year on one hand. So not only is he getting away from plays, but he's turning those potential sacks into 5, 10, 15, 20-yard gains. So, hopefully, this is just, a learning experience last week. And I think we're really going to see, some exciting things over the course of these next few weeks.
There and again, not harping on AJ Wilson. He's going to have some time to learn. He's continuing to grow and mature. It's exciting because he's only a junior. And one of those teachable moments, you're basically around the 5-minute mark, 6-minute mark or so. You have the ball and you only eat up around 47 seconds off the clock on that last drive, of course, before really the last drive was when they run it up just barely and win it there, of course, at the end. But I'm talking about the real last drive. And you only burn about 47 seconds off the clock. And AJ there on the option, he kept the ball and he ran out of bounds, and that stopped the clock. And so you give back a lot of time, and C.E. King took advantage of that last week as they were, as we all know, were able to run the ball down, and then our defense was able to secure that. But just a little bit more about that, Josh, about those teaching moments and how important that situation has been to teach these kids.
Yeah, I mean, those are big, especially for a young team. And I think, like I said earlier, I think the most important thing is that these teaching moments occurred in games that at the end of the day don't count toward, your hunt for a district championship. But like I said, these next few weeks, I think are going to be even bigger tests for this team because you have, a unique matchup this week. And then the number 3 team in the state, coming up next week against A&M Consolidated. So going to learn a lot about this Hornet team, over the next couple of weeks. But I really like what we've seen so far, and I really like how they were able to rally and hold on for their 3rd straight win over a 6A team last week.
We're talking here on Huntsville Sports Weekly. I'm Rob Hipp alongside Josh Criswell, the Huntsville Item. One other player that I wanted to talk about, and I do want to mention that defense on the last stand as well, and we'll get to that here in a moment. As far as our game ball goes, we're going to give away kind of who our game ball should go to. You've got some ideas. I've got some ideas. One of the most versatile players, though, on the team that's starting to really come out of his shell and someone that is doing a good job running the ball, a great job receiving, is Justin Butcher. I kind of consider him maybe one of the most versatile guys on the field. And this is a young man, took 7 rushes for about 48 yards or so, 2 touchdowns last week on the ground, but then through the air as well. Not super impressive, but still, you talk about his opportunity to catch the ball. 4 receptions, 23 yards, his longest was 7. He is someone that is going to continue to mold and develop as this season goes on, and it's good to have that player that can not only get out there and run the ball, but can be a receiver as well. In fact, I think he may ultimately end up being a really good receiver on this team and a really good running back. We've seen it so far this year.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Justin Butcher because, moving on to our game balls, we talked about it before the show, and you kind of have the same choice. But, my second pick right there and my game ball for this week is going to be Justin Butcher just because of what he was able to do last week, even whenever the offense wasn't moving as it's most efficiently as it can. And came up with those 2 key touchdowns that ultimately gave Huntsville that cushion, allowed them to hold on for that victory. I think the thing that I really like to see is the versatility that you mentioned. I mean, he only touched the ball 10 times, averaged over 6 yards, a touch, whether that was carrying the ball or catching a pass. So I think that's something that's going to be a very, unique threat for them, and also going to be something that we see, maybe for situations where plays break down and AJ is, improvising and making something happen with his legs. I think having guys like Justin Butcher out there, as well as Jalen McClain and Jordan Woodbury and those guys, their athleticism is going to open up a lot of big plays for the Hornets.
So yeah, that's your game ball then is Butcher. That was your second. I took your first choice, Josh. Yeah. Then, huh?
I think you took the obvious choice.
Yeah, well, the obvious choice for me, and it was also our what a burger, what a play, is the game ball for me would go to the entire defense, and I wanted to give those guys credit. I went through, of course, as it's happening. It's hard to pick out every single player that was out there, but from what I counted, there were 7 seniors and 4 juniors on that play, that final stand. Of course, you had 4 up front, talking about Q Riles. Also, Brian Bobino and Jaden Ross and Ed Bobino, those guys really putting forth the effort and that initial push. But you can't forget, everybody came in. If you go watch the play, the safeties came in. Everybody back there came in. We're talking about Jadarian White, Waylon Zapoli, Calvin Simmons, Cody McLaren, Nemo Winfrey, Ethan Miner, and Seth Carroll. Give all those guys credit. That entire defense, that's who my game ball goes to. So I'll have to split that ball up into 11 pieces, and they'll each get a little piece of that, Josh. So
there you go. And also Edward Bobino, senior defensive tackle, with another just tremendous performance, earlier today, and it'll be coming out in tomorrow's paper, but secured the Huntsville Items Walker County Player of the Week award for this week.
Yeah, and on the defensive side, 6.5 tackles, 5 of them were solo. He also had a sack and a half and 1 for a loss last week, and so just an excellent pick. And so glad that you guys highlight those players in that way, Josh. I think it's incredible, and folks can read about that and pick it up, of course, in the edition of the Huntsville Item. So make sure that you subscribe to that. Well, Josh, I wanted to mention we've got coaches shows on Wednesday night, 6:30 over at True Texas Barbecue. A big thank you to our friends at HEB and True Texas Barbecue. So come out to that tonight, 6:30. Get out there, come out and see it. It's going to be a lot of fun. You'll hear from several players. I'm not going to give away who. You got to come out, but we're going to interview 3 players. We'll also talk to head coach Rodney Southern and more. It's a lot of fun, and we had it packed last week, which was nice. First week it was new. Not a whole lot of folks there, but now the word is starting to get out. So come out and enjoy barbecue, 6:30 every Wednesday at True Texas Barbecue inside HEB. Josh, I wanted to just briefly, very briefly, as we're getting close to the 30-minute mark here, COVID impacts on football. We've had some cancellations in this area. It seems like in Central Texas, though. I know Westlake, they've had to push their game back now, and basically they're kind of considering this week their bye week. What has that impact been here in our area? We've seen it, of course, in that first game versus Nederland. There's been some impacts, though, related to COVID.
Yeah, I mean, there have been some impacts for sure. You saw that game that you mentioned against Nederland, the opener that was pushed back due to cases at Nederland that they canceled that game the Wednesday before, and Huntsville wasn't able to scramble and find an opponent in time. But also New Waverly, they missed 2 weeks earlier this season. And kind of ended a little bit of momentum they had early on. They were out, to a dominant start to the season, and then kind of hit a little bit of a setback after that. But on a positive note for the Bulldogs, they have really rallied, and they came out and got a really big win over Hemphill last Saturday. So it looks like they finally picked back up that momentum. And I mean, they're in position where if they went out, I think they lock up second place in the district. That's a team that's looking for its first playoff berth since 2016. So another win or two, and they'll be locking that up. So, I'm glad to see New Waverly, who's fortunately been the only team in the area that's had to cancel their games due to COVID-19 cases, has rebounded, not had any more issues in regard to the coronavirus, and has also rebounded and is really starting to hit full stride as they inch closer to the end of their regular season.
Kind of going back a little bit here, Josh, Huntsville Hornet football. We've talked a lot about the varsity team, of course, 3-0. The JV team, your underclass teams, freshmen, 10-0. Hornet football has not lost a game yet. We were talking to Coach on Monday, and he brought that up, and he said, I don't even know if that's ever happened in the history of this program. So this is a really special group of not only varsity players, but all the sub-varsity teams as well. There's a nice pipeline of Hornets and a lot more of that swarm that's going to be coming up, Josh, as we continue on through the years. That's really exciting.
No doubt. I was out there shooting some photos at a couple of the games yesterday, and I was really impressed with everything that I saw. And, we've talked about this before on the show, but that's, you see a program that's, in its 5th, 6th, 7th year with a head coach and Rodney Southern. And that's whenever you start to see a program reap the benefits, not just at the varsity level, but all the way down to the junior high.
Josh, something I wanted to mention, of course, this year with COVID and things that are going on, the A&M Consolidated game, that game at Bowers will be the homecoming game. But then there's 2 other home games scheduled as home games for Huntsville, and that's going to be Lake Creek and then Fulshire to close out the seasons. Those games will not be at Bowers. They have already been scheduled. They will still be home games for us, but we're not going to play them at Bowers. We're going to have to play those at Madisonville because there's going to be some things going on over there at Bowers Stadium. But it will be a home field advantage for us. We've already been told that our cheerleaders can come out, the band and all that. So, you hate not being able to close those last 2 home games at your hometown, but we're appreciative of Madisonville. And, maybe that makes a case that down the road, the Hornets may end up having their own stadium one day. We'll see, but we're very appreciative to Sam Houston and to Bowers. But just wanted to share that news with our audience as well, Josh.
Absolutely.
Well, cool, friends. I think that'll just about do it. Volleyball's going on as well, by the way, too. Don't want to leave them out. There's some games coming up. Huntsville will be at White House. Huntsville 7-5, White House 5-7. That on Friday, and we'll try to keep you up to date with as much as we can. Josh, just any final thoughts before we let you go and we sign off today, man?
No, that's it. I mentioned volleyball, got a sweep last night, also a sweep for Alpha Omega Lady Lions. So Huntsville, I think, in a 3-way tie for 2nd place after picking up that one. Have a big one coming up against White House, who I think is undefeated in league play and sitting in 1st place. So big one coming up Friday. So just stay tuned for updates on that.
Well, Josh, as always, appreciate your time. Thanks for being a part of this show. To everybody out there, it's Huntsville Sports Weekly. We'll be back right here, same time, next Wednesday. We'll talk more about the Hornets, more about what's going on in Huntsville. And just remember, friends, that we're not strong enough alone to make it on our own. We need each other. Provide a word of encouragement, lend a hand of support. Somebody out there needs you. Good afternoon. We'll see you at 6:30 over at True Texas Barbecue. God bless. Josh, thanks a lot. We'll see you.
See you next time.